Disclaimer. Judge Ron Rangel is providing this podcast and website for educational purposes only, as well as to give the public general information regarding topics related to the criminal justice system. The views, thoughts, and opinions of his guest speakers are the speaker's own and do not represent the views, thoughts, and opinions of Judge Rangel. You are now listening to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel.
Not been campaigning. I've been out in the community. All right. Welcome to Beyond the Gavel with Judge Ron Rangel. I'm your host. Today in the studio, we have a very special guest. Before I introduce him to you, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience in the last couple of months. I've been out and about doing the things that I'm supposed to do as an elected public official, and I come across folks here and there. And I've been hearing lately, Ron, we're waiting for your next episode. When can we expect a next episode on Beyond the Gavel? And I tell them, you know, there's a lot of things that have been happening in my life, personal as well as in my professional life. We have somebody very special on the show today. I've actually been trying to get him on the show for quite a while. He's got a formal title. He is a Deputy Chief Public Defender, Stephen Gilmore. Stephen, thanks for being here.
Oh, happy to be here. Really happy.
I know that was a little bit of a long introduction. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I thought I was just here to talk about the conspiracies you were mentioning a few minutes ago.
I'm sure y'all come across those as well.
So my name's Stephen Gilmore. I am the Deputy Chief Public Defender for Bexar County. Our office represents people charged with felonies and misdemeanors in the trial courts. We staff most of the specialty courts in Bexar County. We also have a civil division that represents people who are going through emergency detentions and extended commitments over in the state hospital. And we also have a magistration division that is only one of, I believe, 3 in the state of Texas that actually represents people at the point of magistration, at the initiation of formal charges.
Yeah, so you guys represent indigent defendants.
That's right.
In other words, nobody comes into the system and says, I'm going to hire Stephen Gilmore.
That's right. You couldn't hire me if you wanted to.
So how does it work? How is somebody considered to be indigent? How does somebody qualify to be represented by your office?
So it can happen a few different ways. Folks at the point of magistration getting arrested will get interviewed by pretrial services. Pretrial services will give them a sort of an indigence questionnaire, essentially.
Which is another portion of the county. Right? Pretrial services is a county division.
That's right.
Which is put together to check a lot of things about. They do an assessment as to their mental health. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they want to make sure physically that they're okay.
Right.
One of the big things they do is they check their indigency status. They see how much money they make. Mm-hmm. So how does that work?
And so a lot of it's based on self-report. You know, pretrial can't really isn't in a position at that point in the case to be calling banks to make sure that the amount of cash on hand the person says is accurate.
Right.
But a lot of it's based on self-report. They figure out, you know, where are you working? Are you married? Do you have dependents? What's your monthly salary or your hourly wage, whichever it is. And based on your financial ability to pay, they determine whether or not you meet a specific threshold that makes you eligible for a court-appointed attorney in Bexar County. And there are sort of two different, I guess, systems of court appointments in Bexar County.
Yes.
That sort of work more or less in harmony. One path is through our office, which is the public defender's office. The only thing that we do is represent indigent defendants, and none of us are allowed to engage in the private practice of criminal defense.
And that's in the law, right?
That is statutory.
Statute,
we cannot engage in the private practice of criminal defense. We can maintain civil practices, but we cannot engage in private practice of criminal defense statutorily. The other path is through appointments through the manage assigned counsel.
Right.
And in order to qualify for either one, you have to be indigent. But appointments through the manage assigned counsel, what those do is those get filtered through pretrial services and the manage assigned counsel, and then they get referred to a private attorney who is eligible to receive court appointments in Bexar County.
Right.
That private attorney can still engage in the private practice of criminal law. but they're willing to also accept indigent appointments through the managed assigned counsel. When I was in private practice, before I joined the public defender's office, I was one of those attorneys. It was before we didn't have the MAC when I was in private practice.
That's right. I remember you doing that.
But I was one of the attorneys that accepted indigent appointments, not just in Bexar County, but also in the Southern District of Corpus Christi in federal court. I was on the CJA panel in the Western District, receiving federal appointments in the San Antonio Division, also on the Fifth Circuit list. I received appeals in other counties as well, along with juvenile appointments. And so as a private attorney, and I say all that to illustrate that as a private attorney, accepting indigent appointments, you can get spread thin sometimes.
Which is what we're talking about, yes.
Because we're trying to do a lot of different things. And in a lot of ways, we're trying to become good at a lot of different things within the sphere of criminal defense, because there are so many different areas of practice just within criminal defense, whether you're doing appeals or juvenile representation, parole work, post-conviction work. And if you're really serious about doing criminal defense, you do try to figure out how all of those things work together. And that was what I was trying to do. But it is a lot. And I'm talking primarily about the work in Bexar County, but I practiced in Nueces County. I practiced in San Patricio. I would go to Guadalupe County, and so there's a lot of moving around. And incidentally, that's what a lot of the private attorneys receiving court appointments still do.
They do.
It's hard work. Whereas with the public defender's office, we're just here.
And so when you were on the wheel, before you started with the public defender's office, was that pre or post MAC?
Oh, it was pre-MAC. And in fact, when I started, I was immediately put on the misdemeanor wheel. I eventually got exceptions to receive felony appointments pretty quickly, but initially I was on the misdemeanor wheel. When I started, and I think probably for the first 2 years I was in practice, that flat fee for the DWI plea or dismissal that I got was $140.
That was it.
Yep.
Flat.
$140.
And it stayed that way unless you actually went to trial.
That's right. In which case you could get $500.
So you could have gone to court. You could have gone to court maybe 10 times.
That's right.
12 times, got a case dismissed on the eve of trial.
Yep.
And the most you're going to get is $140.
That is correct.
Right.
It did end up going up to 180, but then once the MAC finally came in, they were able to get more equitable pay for the attorneys that are doing that work. But it was hard work for no money, and so the only reason you were doing it is because you cared about doing the work.
Right.
Like I never cared about like what the fee was on the voucher. None of that ever mattered to me.
Your heart's got to be in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so another thing that has come up that I've read, related to appointments and things of that nature is MAC, in other words, the wheel system, private attorneys versus a public defender's office. And one of the issues was back since you were practicing on the wheel before the MAC, the judges oversaw everything.
That's right.
Right. The judges were responsible for the approval of who was on the wheels. They were responsible for the payment, for the vouchers, for the appointments, basically everything as it relates to the wheel system. And what we've done in Bexar County, and I think we're now in the 6th or 7th year, maybe the 7th year now, of actually having the MAC in place, where the MAC does all that.
Right.
And so now the MAC sort of acts almost like the public defender's office in the sense that they oversee, make sure quality representation is there. So judges are not involved with the appointment system or anything like that, or the pay. There's vouchers committee and the MAC does all that. In your situation, y'all have an actual office.
That's right.
So you're an actual county department.
That's right.
You want to tell us a little bit about how that works?
Yeah. So, like I said at the beginning, we have a team of attorneys who work in the county courts handling misdemeanor offenses, as well as the misdemeanor specialty courts. We have the DWI court, the misdemeanor drug or Camino court. Those are run out of County Courts 1 and 11. We have the Veterans Treatment Court misdemeanor side and County Court number 6, and as well as the Mental Health Court, which is where we got started handling trial level cases was in that misdemeanor mental health court in County Court 12. We also have our felony trial division, which is where I started at the public defender's office.
Yeah. You were already experienced when you came in, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
I had already tried a number of cases before I got here. The felony attorneys also handle a lot of the specialty courts as well. We handle your felony mental health court.
That's right.
All of us are accepting felony offenses up to everything except for capital murder.
Right.
So those are the only grade of offense that our office is not allowed to handle. And our office has tried a number of first-degree felonies, aggravated sexual assault of a child. We have murders that are pending now. So we handle everything in this county that results in a criminal prosecution. But in addition to the attorneys that we have working for us, we also have a team of social workers and case managers. We have 2 investigators that are on staff. We have paralegals that are on staff. And we have all of those resources on staff because our office has a holistic approach to representing persons charged with offenses in Bexar County, which is quite a bit different than the way the private bar, by necessity, has to operate.
Yes.
By necessity, the private bar, most attorneys receiving court appointments aren't working for a firm of some kind. Most of the attorneys that are receiving court appointments are solo practitioners, just like I was.
That's the criminal defense side, right?
Right. And in private practice and private solo practice, buddy, I'm the paralegal, I'm the investigator, and I'm the social worker.
You're the janitor.
That's right.
You're the electrician.
And again, that's just sort of by necessity, right?
Yes.
Our office, we have the luxury of having those resources so that we can provide some additional services and also to take a view of the case that, in private practice, you just wouldn't have the luxury of being able to do.
Well, you've always worked in indigent defense.
That's right.
So what is it about specifically representing individuals accused of crime that attracted you to public defense, and why is it that you still do it? What is it that has kept you in this arena?
Well, criminal defense is all I was ever going to do. I was never going to do anything else. I graduated high school in 2004, and a month later, I went to work for my uncle John Gilmore and Doug Tinker down in Corpus Christi, both very well-known attorneys in Texas. Worked with them for a little over 3 years, and then I moved here and worked for some other fairly well-known attorneys, Brock Huffman, Scott Simpson, who was a former guest.
That's right. I think episode 4.
Yeah. And Judge Jennifer Pena, who's now in the 290th District Court, worked with them. And I did that all through law school. Even my 1L year, I was still working 20 hours a week as a paralegal. So this was all I was ever gonna do.
Right.
I had sort of a natural aptitude for it, I think. And I try not to do anything that I don't have a natural aptitude for.
Smart. Yeah.
But even through law school, I had like a reputation, I guess, for as someone who kind of understood those things a little bit and was taking it seriously.
Right.
Was taking criminal defense seriously.
Right.
And straight out of law school, went into private solo practice as a criminal defense attorney. This was all I was just sort of naturally okay at, something I just naturally understood what I needed to do, had enough experience in it to where I felt like, sort of the common wisdom coming out of law school is, everyone tells you got to go to a DA's office, especially in a rural county. You go to a DA's office in a rural county, you're going to get to try cases faster. You're going to get to try more serious cases faster. And that's where you get your trial experience. And then if you really want to, you can go into private practice.
Right.
That was the conventional wisdom. That was what everybody told me to do.
But to get the experience, right?
I didn't want to do that.
Well, you had experience. You were one who, when you finished law school, you had the experience.
Yeah, I had seen, my uncle or Doug or Scotty. I'd seen them try. But by the time I graduated law school, I had seen more than 20, 30 cases to a verdict.
And that's significant. And your uncle and Doug are very well-known attorneys. I grew up in Portland, Texas, which is outside of Corpus, and I had heard of them. And so you had some good tutors around you. You had some good mentors.
That's right.
Yeah, for those that don't really understand the public defender's office, what a public defender's office does, what is it that you wish they knew that your particular office does that would sort of increase their awareness?
I mean, I think what I wish everyone knew about the public defender's office is how much we care about the people that we represent and the community that they're in.
There's a genuine love of the job.
Truly. Right? None of us look at our clients as criminals or as, psychopaths or whatever. Like, we really view our people, our clients, as people who were thrust into circumstances perhaps beyond their maturity, perhaps beyond their, ability to deal with. And they make choices, right?
Yes.
But they don't make choices under circumstances of their own choosing.
Right.
And I think that all of us in the public defender's office, most of us have experience either, personally or through family members or other loved ones who've had interactions with the criminal justice system. And I think all of us understand on a personal level that we would never want to be judged for who we might have been on our worst day.
Right.
And that's what a lot of our clients go through. And so,
I think there's always a danger in painting any situation in black and white.
Sure.
And so one of the things that we do in criminal law is we recognize what those shades of gray look like.
Yeah.
And your job, a part of it, right? You have a lot of different jobs. You wear all the hats that we're talking about. But part of your job is to make sure that those shades of gray that eliminate the entire situation in its entirety is something that the public, the judges, the courts, the juries can all see and all recognize in terms of looking at individuals as human beings.
That's right.
Right. And so you got to have that care. You got to have that love.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great attribute to have. It's necessary, especially in defense, but a good prosecutor should have the exact same sense. We're talking about, do you start at the DA's office? And one of the things that I've always told prosecutors that have never had experience as defense attorneys is a great prosecutor is somebody who has worked with the defense.
Yeah.
Somebody who has an understanding as to what people's lives really look like.
Yeah.
Because we're not talking about everyday normal life that we consider to be normal as to those that are involved in the system. Yeah. Right. So that's important. We're talking about what we wish people would know and misconceptions and things of that nature. What do you think is the biggest misperception or misconception that the public has about public defenders?
About public defenders or court-appointed attorneys in general?
Let's talk about both. Yeah.
I think that I think applying one to both, I think that the biggest misconception that the public has is that if I get a court-appointed attorney, I'm getting a hack, right? I'm just getting some hack. And, on a case-by-case basis, maybe that's true. When the MAC came in here to Bexar County, they did excellent work, sort of culling some of the fat from the appointment lists.
Right. Which was difficult for judges to do.
Yep.
Right. Because of friendships and loyalties and
That's
things of that nature. Yes.
And one of the reasons I was so committed to staying on those appointment lists when I was in private practice is because every month, especially on the misdemeanor side, we would get the lists. The attorneys would get the list of the other attorneys who were receiving court appointments. And I would see some of those names on that list and think, if I get off this misdemeanor wheel, this person is going to get my cases.
Right.
And I can't let that happen.
Right.
And I think that now that the MAC is here and now that the MAC has eliminated some of those less capable attorneys, I think that they've done a lot of good work to sort of dispel that misconception. That's one thing that I wish just sort of writ large, there was less mistrust coming in, and having a court-appointed attorney, whether it's court-appointed through the MAC or through the public defender's office. With public defenders, I think that the biggest misconception I would like to dispel is the idea that we're public defenders because we couldn't make it in private practice.
Yes. That's a good perception. Yes.
And I think that's more of like, sometimes the public has that perception, but I think also colleagues in the bar, at least when I first started at the public defender's office, may have had that perception as well. And, I'm not sure I didn't have that perception when I was in private practice. I mean, I didn't go to the public defender's office because I wasn't doing well in private practice.
Right.
I went to the public defender's office because I didn't want to care about money. And I didn't really care about, money. I never had to worry about where my next meal was coming from, how I was going to keep the lights on.
Right.
I did very well in private practice, but I never sent a bill.
Right.
Not one time, never sent an invoice. I left a ton of money on the table.
Yes.
One of the first lessons Doug taught me when I went to work for him is he asked me, you going to be a lawyer someday? I said, yes, sir.
Uh-huh.
He goes, good. Quote, twice what you're worth and get half up front. And so I moved here and I was pretty good about quoting the getting the half up front. But when I saw that I was only worth $140 for a misdemeanor, I was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not worth very much here in Bear County.
Right. And it was low. Yeah.
But I did well. And what happened was I tried a case with Tanya Rivera at the public defender's office.
Uh-huh.
And it was a misdemeanor case, and Michael Young at the time was the chief. He had, asked me a few times to come over, and I'd always told him if you get a felony, if they give you felony jurisdiction at some point.
Yeah, he recruited you, right?
Yeah.
And I remember he and I had that conversation. Yes.
I said, if you get felony spots at some point, I'm your guy. I will do it.
Yes.
And I tried this misdemeanor case with Tanya, and had a blast. And within a few weeks, Michael was announcing the felony spots, and he had offered me one. And I asked Tanya, "What are you doing here?
Uh-huh.
Are you just doing this until you feel like you can, I don't know, go out on your own? Like, are you just doing this until you feel like you've saved up enough money to go start your own practice?" And she said, "No, I'm a public defender."
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of just changed the way I thought about it.
Uh-huh. One of the interesting things I've noted. So I've been teaching, right? I've been a professor at UTSA. I've been teaching for over a decade. I don't remember exactly how long it was. That's how I first met Alana. But when I ask at the beginning of every semester, and I'll timestamp this. We are currently this is August the 12th, 2026. School at UTSA starts next week.
Yeah.
I always ask my students, if any of my future students are listening to this, or any former students, you would know. I always ask them the first day of class, well, what is it you want to be? What is it you're going to school for? And most of my students, by and large, want to be lawyers. And over the years, there has been a real shift that I've noticed in my classes that most people say, I want to represent criminal defendants. Mm-hmm. I want to be a criminal defense lawyer. Before, they're looking at, I think, money. They were talking about corporate law. And in my mind, I'm thinking, a lot of people have a tendency to go in that direction before they go to law school. When they finish law school, things have a tendency to change. But there seems to be a push today to have this general distrust of government, to make sure that individuals are protected from government overreach or intrusion. And so I think a lot of younger students that are going into law school that are very bright, very capable, are going to be fantastic lawyers, have in their minds, I'm going to represent indigent defendants when I become a lawyer.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting phenomenon.
Well, I think that's absolutely true. And one of the reasons I think that that's happening is because of how much more prevalent public defenders' offices and nonprofit organizations accepting larger indigent defense contracts.
Right.
I think that sort of the prevalence of organizations and offices like ours, I think that that's sort of becoming something more in the collective consciousness of young people, right? That they are starting to understand this as a career and not just a thing I do for a little bit while I get up the confidence to go be in private practice.
Right.
And I think a lot of people still kind of look at the DA's office, right? Because that's, like I said before, that's the conventional wisdom. You're only doing the DA's office until you learn, about how to try a case. And then you can go out on your own and make the real money.
Right.
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 But I think it's just different now. I don't think that young people, young attorneys are necessarily looking at criminal law like that, because the opportunity to get truly involved in a case on the defense side is there at a much earlier time period for young attorneys than it ever has been before.
Yeah, it's built in, right? Mm-hmm. You have this great title. You are the Deputy Chief Public Defender. And so you're obviously involved with mentoring. You're obviously involved in a supervisory capacity at the Public Defender's Office. And we talk about young attorneys that are coming in. Think about the kind of law that we do. Think about the hardship circumstances that we come across. What do you specifically do when you see young lawyers that sometimes feel discouraged with all the difficult cases that they're carrying and having the weight of representing people that have such serious consequences that are potentially at hand? What is it that you do to encourage the younger attorneys to keep up with it, to keep their head up and to keep doing their best?
I think everybody has sort of a different approach. My approach has always been, they need to see it done first. Because until they see it done, you're talking about abstractions, right? The way that I try to help the young attorneys is, we find a case. Okay, you're going to watch me do this trial. You're going to sit with me. I will take the lead. You'll see how I handle these problems as they come up, and you'll think about how you would have done it.
Right.
Right. And then next time it'll still be you and me, but you're going to be the lead.
Right.
Right. And we'll work through this stuff together, because I just always feel like, you can go to a million continuing legal education seminars. We have Rusty Duncan here in San Antonio for the defense bar, and it's excellent. And SACLA, the San Antonio Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, we put on, of which I'm a board member, incidentally, we put on those same kinds of
You just got some big award from the association. We don't want to, I know it's hard sometimes to talk about ourselves. I totally get that. But what is it that they gave you?
They gave me the Criminal Defense Lawyer of the Year award.
And that's all the criminal defense attorneys in San Antonio. There's a lot of them. The defense bar, on the wheel, those that only take hired cases, retained cases, and those of the public defender's office. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm the first public defender to get that award.
Of the year.
So, yeah.
Yes. So what kind of weight does that, do you get to walk on red carpets? Do you get to wear a sash during Fiesta? What's going on here?
Well, it's actually an interesting question. It makes me feel like I have a lot of responsibility.
Yes.
And a lot of expectations.
Yes.
Like they don't just give that award away, and there are a lot of really good attorneys. And
no, I agree.
If I manage to trick them into thinking that I'm one of them, well, now I have to actually perform, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, sort of that burden of expectation is there. And I don't mind it. Like I think that maybe that's something that makes me care more or makes me try harder.
I don't think anybody was surprised when I heard about it, when we talked about it with other folks. It makes sense. So
I appreciate that.
I know, and I know they take that award seriously. It is a big deal with the organization. So congratulations for that.
Thank you.
You work with judges, you work with prosecutors, and as it relates to being an adversary, you're dealing with cases. What is it that you wish they knew about the kind of work that your office does?
With the prosecutors, man, that is an interesting question, because obviously we're supposed to have this adversarial system of justice, and I believe in that, right?
Right.
But I also believe that there is a cooperative aspect to it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I've tried, big cases in Bexar County and in your court that, went smoothly and could not have gone as smoothly as they did if I didn't have a good relationship with that prosecutor,
right?
Who could trust me enough to speak candidly to me, and I could trust her enough to speak candidly to her. I do believe that there has to be some cooperation in order for things to just work.
What about those clients? And I had those, and I had to explain that too, right? You got to have courtroom work group cooperation.
Yeah.
You have to. It benefits every client. What about those clients that all they seem to really care about is seeing you fight? I want to see my lawyer fight for me.
Well, I usually give them a pretty good show.
Yeah.
I haven't run into that problem. But, one thing that I do and that our office does is we spend a lot of time with the clients, especially outside of the courtroom.
Yes.
And so they get to hear us talk about their case and talk about their lives and talk passionately
Yes.
about those things. And so I think that, we're constantly purchasing goodwill
Yes.
with our clients so that when we get into the courtroom, we don't have to worry about that quite as much. I've certainly experienced it, through observations of other attorneys. Right. And, one thing that I think, helps that situation is the client has things that they want. Right. I think I've talked to you before, I have a particular soft spot for pro se defendants who are representing themselves, right?
Yes.
Because they have these motions, they have these things that they've filed that they think they're entitled to.
Right.
And I think that, kind of the impulse that a lot of attorneys has is, that's stupid. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that argument. I'm not going to advance that theory. And I take the exact opposite approach. You filed some motions, great. I'm going to file a motion to adopt every single one of them.
Uh-huh.
We're going to get a hearing.
Uh-huh.
And, and the argument can be pro forma. Judge, the motion speaks for itself. He says that he didn't get appointed an attorney until 72 hours after he was magistrated, and the Supreme Court says he's entitled to one at the point of magistration, right?
Right.
And so you can make that argument, and everybody understands what you're doing in that courtroom.
Right.
The judge doesn't think you're a stupid attorney for making that argument. He knows why you're doing it.
Right.
The
That's
state understands why you're doing it, and all you're doing is just buying goodwill with the client by advancing the argument that they want to see.
I've seen you make that argument, and now it totally makes sense to me. You illuminated something as it relates to something that you had argued before, and so it's a great conversation. I mean, I had this conversation over lunch today. I had lunch today with an individual, and she asked me, about, so-and-so a good attorney, and is so-and-so a good attorney? And it's like, well, yes, absolutely. But there's a lot of different ways to be a good attorney. And I think I mentioned this earlier in this podcast, in this episode, is that it's very difficult to find somebody who's good on a lot of different things. As a lawyer, but as a lawyer, you do have so many different ways to be good at your job. One of them is managing those client expectations. Right. And so what is it that you do at the onset and throughout the pendency of a case to ensure that, because I have seen those lawyers, and again, I'm not saying anybody is not great at their job, but I've seen those lawyers that always seem to have the same kind of issues with certain clients. I've never seen anybody with the public defender's office in this court, where it seems like more than one client is having the same issue over and over again. So obviously y'all are doing something to make or help defendants feel like they have a holistic defense going on. Is that the idea? Is
Absolutely.
That kind of, so you can, yes.
It's very client centered. Like every single client interview I'm involved in, the first question is, what do you want to accomplish?
Right.
Like, what is your goal?
Right.
What are the barriers to accomplishing that goal? And, and we can have discussions with them about, how realistic some of those goals might be, or, how, what are the best ways of going about, achieving those goals. But at the end of the day, we are letting them know, if you want a trial, we are the people that will give it to you, and we will give it to you more or less the way you want it. If you're wanting a plea, then we will do everything we can to make sure that it's the best plea you can possibly get.
Right.
But it's all, we do not have a top-down approach to representing clients. We don't have that sort of verticality, right?
Right.
Everything is directed by, what the client wants to see happen with their case.
Right. Help them feel like they're being represented.
Yeah, they're in the driver's seat. I'm just here to accomplish their aims.
Yeah. And so technology has changed so much. We've talked about with other guests how technology has changed the work that they do. Mm-hmm. I think there was a prosecutor that I had on not too long ago. We're talking about how digital technology has changed a lot of the work that they do and the time that goes into things. And so let's say nowadays, you get discovery, and discovery comes in the form of 5 body cams, a couple of dash cams, some sort of interrogations in police stations. That's a lot of extra work that didn't exist when I was practicing, right? When I was practicing, we'd get a murder case, we'd get a file. And in that file had all the documents we had to look at, photographs, whatever we needed. Nowadays, you're getting disks. Nowadays, you're getting gigabytes of information. How does your office process and handle that?
Well, in that regard, it's not really that much different from the way the private bar does it. Mm-hmm. Especially now in Bexar County, the law enforcement and the DA's office here in Bexar County just changed the way they distribute discovery to the defense bar. Mm-hmm. And in some ways, it is a better system, and in a lot of ways it is a much worse system.
Yes. It's got a lot of kinks to it, right?
It does.
A lot of issues. And we see that in court, right? Where I'm asking, today was our trial docket. We're going to start a jury trial tomorrow. It's going to be a aggravated sexual assault case. And I was surprised that I didn't get the typical, like, y'all ready? And the parties say, even though it's an old case, we're having issues with the discovery system. That's like an everyday process. Yeah. So how do y'all handle that?
I think that is probably maybe a rarer occurrence, just because we have the staff that we have that helps us accomplish that. I mean, for the individual private practitioner receiving court appointments, if you are the paralegal, the social worker, the investigator, and the attorney wrapped into one, then that means you're the person who's going to be responsible for downloading the discovery. You're the person that's going to be responsible for returning the phone calls. The story I always tell about me being in private practice was having to handle all those roles myself. I can return the client phone calls. I can get the motions file. I can go to court. I can watch the discovery. The one thing that I didn't absolutely have to do was the voucher.
Right.
Which meant that always, for me,
right,
that always got pushed back. I never once itemized a voucher, just because if I wanted to do all those other things and do them well, I was never going to have time to sit down and itemize a voucher.
You can't do it all.
No.
Yeah.
And now, with the way that the discovery is, and I guess this is maybe perhaps hyper technical to Bexar County, though I believe the system that they've adopted, the Axon system, is probably going to be used in a lot of other counties going forward as well.
Yeah, in the long run, right? It'll be better, but there's a lot of kinks right now.
The problem right now is it is very difficult to rely on staff to get your discovery for you,
right,
just because of the additional layers of security that the Axon system has, and its sort of inflexibility to remove some of those barriers. So the maybe the older, less tech savvy attorneys can't always have their paralegal get all their discovery for them if they're lucky enough to have one.
Right.
So it is complicated. I think that one of the benefits of the current system is that it allows you to look at body cam and everything within your web browser. So you don't have to download it. So you don't have to waste time downloading a dash cam on a shoplifting case, right? Like I don't need to see that dash cam,
right?
Unless the car goes inside Walmart, that dash cam is not going to help me. So you can kind of filter out like what you absolutely need to see a lot more easily.
Right. AI maybe kind of helps with that sometimes.
AI can help in terms of like if I get interrogations or if I get a DWI and there's a lot of interaction in the field. The only thing I use AI for, the only thing that I probably would use AI for is generating transcripts.
Right. Yeah. As a defense attorney, you got to be careful, right? You don't want to miss anything that could benefit your client.
That's right.
That's the argument there.
And so having it all in writing and being able to like digest it that way as I'm listening to it as well, I think is very helpful. But I mean, having investigators that can access the discovery and help us parse things is very helpful. Having social workers that, are also reviewing discovery and looking for, the signs of, say, substance abuse issues or mental health crises. We have a big team, and that's not even taking into consideration the collaboration we do with all of the other attorneys that we're working with. Right? None of us in that office have an issue or a case that is just ours.
Right.
Everything is, to the extent that it has some contested issue. Mm-hmm. Everything is shared. Everyone's giving input. Everyone's, looking at the body cam. Is that search good? Is that statement custodial? Whatever it is.
Oh, that's great.
Everyone's giving their input.
That's got to be a good feeling. Mm-hmm. That was one of the best things for me about working at the DA's office is having that group think, in a positive way. Well, we can talk about public defender issues forever. And really, we're just starting to scratch the surface. I'd love to bring you on and talk to you more about public defender stuff.
Of course.
I asked you, what are you interested in? What is it that you gave me a name of movement. It's called movement lawyering. And this movement lawyering is not a phrase that I'm familiar with. You want to tell us a little bit about what that is and why is it that you're interested in that particular type of advocacy?
Sure. So I kind of, in my late teenage and young adulthood, kind of came up in and around political organizations and political organizing. Mm-hmm. And so I was always interested in it, primarily labor issues, unionization type things.
Yes.
Those are things I cared about, things I was interested in.
Yes.
Whenever I was starting up in law school, I became aware of certain organizations that were more directly involved, because everyone knows about, like, the ACLU, right?
Right.
NAACP, right? And they all do good work, of course. But then there are other organizations that are more directly involved with the movements themselves, with the social organizing itself. Uh-huh. The ACLU comes in after everything is done, and
right.
They figure out, okay, well, how do we take this case to the Supreme Court or whatever it is, right?
Right.
Whereas movement lawyering, organizations like the National Lawyers Guild, which is the oldest progressive and fully integrated from its inception legal association in the United States, formed in the 1930s. Groups like that were actually involved in, United Auto Workers strike, the trial of the Chicago 8. They were actually representatives from the United States that went to and participated in the Nuremberg trials and helped in the creation of the United Nations. They were involved in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee that not only defended but participated in the sit-ins in Selma and the marches. The Students for a Democratic Society in the 70s. The students against sweatshops in the 90s, like they were not just coming in on the back end to handle lawsuits or bring individual claims. They were working with the organizations and asking them, much like I do now as a defense attorney, what is your goal? I'm not telling you. I think a lot of times whenever someone comes to ask an attorney's advice, right? Uh-huh. The attorney's sort of inclined to say, ooh, I don't know about that.
Right.
I don't know that I would do that. You
Right.
might get arrested.
Right.
Whereas sometimes when you're working with social organizations, they're like, no, we understand that we may get arrested for this.
Right.
If we're going to stop the Keystone Pipeline, we
Right.
have to accept that power's not going to like that and will probably arrest us.
It's going to be a backlash.
Exactly.
And it's got to work across the political spectrum, right? I mean, I see lawyers, people have this fundamental understanding or belief that if you're representing defendants, folks charged with crimes, you got to be some sort of progressive, liberal, left wing. They have this thought process that sort of paints everybody with a broad brush. But I work with lawyers every day, right? We do. And lawyers are across the political spectrum. I see a lot of defense attorneys that are far right, some that are far left, everybody in between, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so what you're describing to me is trying to make a political change in a way that is for the people.
That's right.
So it's something that I think would be somebody would stereotype. Sort of like, this is what a criminal defense attorney is working for the people, right? What organizations have you been interested in? What have you worked with? What is it that you've done in movement lawyering?
Well, so, and you're talking about right wing, I have a story I can tell too. But in terms of the organizations, I was a member of the National Lawyers Guild, the local San Antonio branch. I was on the board. I was in the very early days of my practice. I was on the steering committee for the or National Steering Committee, legal steering committee for the DSA, the Democratic Socialists of America. I was involved in the March for Our Lives demonstrations after the Parkland shooting. I partnered with Texas Appleseed to provide representation for students who were facing disciplinary action in their schools for participating in the walkouts after to protest gun violence.
Yes.
The story I'd tell is after the J20 demonstrations in 2017, when a lot of activists got arrested during the protests in DC, the feds brought conspiracy charges against a lot of those activists, which I thought was pretty severe governmental overreach. I thought it was a disgusting way to wield the legal power. And I made a post. I said, I made a post on social media. If anyone is arrested in the course of peaceful protest or demonstration, so long as I'm in private practice, I will represent you pro bono. No questions asked. I will represent you pro bono. And the first person who took me up on that offer was a right-wing First Amendment auditor who was protesting gun issues or in support of some Second Amendment auditors outside of Leon Valley. And so, I have my own sort of political leanings, right, and political beliefs that were quite different than this person's. But that was the first person that reached out to me, and I certainly wasn't going to discriminate. And I ended up truly believing that, not in any of his particular issues or beliefs, but I did believe that he got arrested for those political issues and beliefs. And I was all of the people that got arrested at that particular demonstration, my client was the only one that got his case dismissed.
I mean, that's part of, congratulations for that. I mean, that's an accomplishment, but that's part of representing people. That's part of defending the Constitution, right? You're not looking at it from political spectrums or whether you agree with the way people think. I mean, obviously a criminal defense attorney does never agree with murder, right? Or sexual assault or something like that.
Right.
That's not, you're not representing somebody because you're defending actions like that.
Yeah.
You're representing what it means to be a free people in a country that is supposed to honor and that does honor constitutional rights. I mean, that's what our entire foundation is based on. And so, I do hear some political verbiage in our conversation. Is a political future something that you've thought about? Are you thinking about public office at some point, or
not really?
No.
I mean, it's if there was ever a path to get on the Court of Criminal Appeals, that might be interesting. But I don't have any interest in being a trial judge or going to Congress or anything like that.
And for folks that don't know, the Court of Criminal Appeals is the criminal law version of the Texas Supreme Court in Texas, the highest court in the state law for criminal cases. And so that's an elected position. To get on the ballot, you got to get X number of signatures across so many counties in the state, and you got to run statewide.
Yep.
And a lot of folks can't name who those individuals are, but they wield a lot of power.
Truly.
Yes, that's just the nature of the system. Well, good. Anything else related to movement lawyering that you're interested in discussing?
I think that it really sort of informs the way that I practice criminal defense. I've represented people who were arrested during the George Floyd demonstrations. I represented people who were protesting ICE detention facilities, and sort of the clearest instance of movement lawyering that I was engaged in was there were a group of protesters who were arrested for a sit-in at then Congressman Will Hurd's office. There were actually two concurrent sit-ins going on, one at Joaquin Castro's office and one at Will Hurd's office.
You got a Democratic congressman and a Republican congressman.
And at Joaquin Castro's office, Congressman Castro came out and talked to the protesters that were doing the sit-in, and everybody walked away with a better understanding. At Will Hurd's office, every one of them got arrested. They contacted me for pro bono representation. I was happy to do it. It was about 6 or 7 of them.
Wow.
I tried to get them. I tried to find separate attorneys for each of them because as an attorney, I'm thinking about conflict, not about movement. Yeah. I'm thinking about conflict. Well, if I represent this one person and maybe this one's been arrested before, but this one hasn't. And so that's how I was thinking as a lawyer. But they said, no, we don't want to get separated.
Right.
We don't want a result for one person that the other's not going to get.
Right.
And that was I was representing the movement in that moment.
They were in it together.
Exactly.
Right.
And so there was a joint defense agreement, no conflicts. If Susie's getting her case dismissed, Johnny better too. Otherwise, I'm not accepting that dismissal.
Collaborative, almost like being in a rock band, right? Everybody's in tune together. Yeah. Everybody's playing it together, making the same kind of music. That's great. Yeah. That's a good goal. And it's a good way to look at what the law should do. So as it relates to that, let's translate that into the courtroom, right? Let's say you're representing somebody, either through movement lawyering or as a public defender. What do you want the lawyers that work in your office, what do you want them to remember about the individual that they're representing in court?
We have a lot of clients. And it's all, some people are easy to remember, some people aren't.
Like life, right? The same kind of.
What I want every one of those lawyers in our office to do is to find that universal humanity in each of them. And remember, every time you get a client, that universal humanity is in there.
Right.
And that's what I want them to remember, that they never lose sight of the fact that it is a person.
Right.
That you have to care about and that you have to help guide through this often unfair system.
Right. Every person has the ability, should have the ability theoretically, to feel love and attachment and pain and joy and basically everything that goes along with being a human. Remember that part of them. And so what is it that you want to impart to the court system, to judges, to prosecutors about your clients? That same type of humanity, obviously.
Sure.
But there's a little bit of a different twist, right?
It's difficult because not every client has the same, defensive theory or the same posture with respect to what has occurred.
Right.
Some people are just innocent, wholly innocent. Some people are less innocent and feel really bad about their level of culpability.
Right.
Some people are less innocent and don't feel bad about it at all.
Right.
And so
Humanity.
and there's no end of humanity in those people as well.
Right. It's just across the spectrum, right?
But you have to take those best qualities of your client and shine a light on them for the judge or for the jury. And sometimes it's easier to discern those qualities than others.
Yeah.
Sometimes, we need more expert help of our social workers and investigators to figure out what those things are.
Yes.
And then to translate them in a way that the judges understand. Because I think, and we're talking about judges and juries, but really prosecutors too.
Right.
And everybody has sort of, speaking of the judges and prosecutors, everybody has sort of different things about people in cases that they, may be sympathetic towards. Some judges are really keen on, mental health issues. Some judges are more keen on, substance abuse. I know you had Judge Ernie Glenn was on here.
Yes.
The adult drug court.
Yes. He just got some big award. That court just got some state court of the year type thing.
Well, and honestly, the way that he spends as a specialty court judge so much individual time with the participants.
He does. Yeah.
And really kind of cares and empathizes with what they're going through.
Yes.
That's special in a judge. And knowing what kind of makes Judge Glenn tick or what makes, you tick to a degree, and being able to find that in the client and present it to you in a way that, because it's all translation. We're translating this person into a way that will make you see them for who we think they are.
Right. And so, in your opinion, has the advent of technology, social media, the growth of folks' ability to go online and express themselves, has that made that type of a job, that type of a role on filling in the gaps, on coloring people for who they are, has that made it more challenging as a lawyer?
Yeah. It's made it significantly more challenging.
How so, in your thought?
For two reasons. One, because of perception, right? Like people do things online in a certain context, right? And
with a lack of information.
And then when viewed out of that context, the context of whatever relationship they have with the people that they're sharing it.
Oh, you're talking about like a defendant online.
Oh yeah. Yes. A defendant online. Yeah.
Yes.
People put things on social media and use social media to convey a specific personality that really exists within the context of relationships with people we don't know, the judges don't know. And I think a lot of times people are judged for things that they do and say on social media, often that they may not really even mean.
Right. Right.
On the other hand, it does allow us to, if not shine a great light on the client, take that same flashlight and shine it on other people involved with the case.
Yeah, there's always circumstances. There was a situation years ago where certain family members were not in my family, but in another family, a family that I was involved in representing. They were really angry at the defendant, for what they consider to be a real breach of the marriage. And one of the things that I would tell them is you in order to have that understanding as to how much at fault this person is for that violation in their marriage, you got to really understand the marriage dynamic. And that's something that you're never going to be able to do by looking at something online or by what one person says. The relationship between two people or more is so complex that it's never so easily it's this person's fault. You never really know what happened inside. And what turned out to be was an abusive relationship, which was hidden. And so as a result of that, then this person strayed. And I'm not excusing anything. I'm just saying that there's always more to it as it relates to relationships. And a lot of these crimes, most victims of crimes and defendants in crimes, they're involved with somebody that they have a relationship with.
Right.
And so that's kind of what we're talking about.
Yeah, people become products of those relationships. And
Yeah.
there are things that they might do with one romantic partner or one group of friends that they would never do with another one.
Right.
Because, relationships have a way of conditioning people, right?
Right.
And I think that,
Individualized, right? Yeah.
And I think that a lot of times what happens in those relationships is people forget how to solve their problems,
Right.
and forget how to use their families and social circles to solve those problems in a positive way.
Right.
And what ends up happening is they can escalate. And now, because you don't have a way of solving your problems yourself or a way of utilizing your, social or familial circles, and there's not really, if you can afford marriage counseling or if you can afford things like that, then great. But if you can't, what's your option? Your option is to call the police. And so the police get called a lot more,
Right.
I think, in Bexar County than
I've seen that. Yeah.
than I'm used to.
So as a defender, as a criminal defense attorney, you're definitely wearing more than one hat.
Absolutely.
You're not just coloring in that picture, but you got to understand sociology, psychology, economics,
Try.
Anthropology, I guess. I read somewhere that was not a very, very well-paying degree to get, but it seems like it's something that you would use as a lawyer, right? All these different kinds of skills are necessary to fully holistically represent a defendant.
That's right.
And that's something that it seems like, based on our discussions, not just today, but in the past, it seems like your office is really focused on doing the holistic defense.
Yeah, it truly is quite different. And it's not to say that, anyone in the private bar is doing it worse or less effective than we are.
Right.
This is the method of representation that I believe in. This is the one that I've found to be most effective for my style of practice and the way that I communicate with people, the way I communicate with the court and other lawyers. And we're trying to make sure that every attorney we recruit to our office has those same ideas.
What would you say to somebody, the average person, right? Just an individual that who's never needed a public defender, who's never been arrested, they've gone through life, doing the things that theoretically they're supposed to do. What would you say to them to explain why the work that you do matters to them, even though they may not ever personally need your services? Why is it that they should care about what you do?
Because they absolutely could need my services.
Mm-hmm.
And they know somebody, I guarantee you, that is in their life that did need my services and at one point thought they never would. And I think that that's a big part of defense work, is getting jurors and getting the public to put themselves in the shoes of the person accused, in the shoes of the defendant, and to understand, there, but for the grace of God go I on quite a number of these cases, right?
Yeah.
How many jurors remember a sketchy drive home in college that they probably shouldn't have done, but they made it home just safe? Well, maybe this guy that's sitting next to me here, he wasn't that lucky, but that could have been you, right?
Yeah.
And getting juries to kind of understand that the line that separates the people, in prison from the rest of us walking around without any criminal history is a lot thinner than they're willing to admit.
And that's something that we see every day, right? Every day. Well, Stephen, this has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. It's been very easy. Again, I almost feel like we're cutting our time short, just because there's so much we could talk about. And I feel like we're leaving a lot of stuff on the table, as we have to close, because we don't want, we do want our listeners to come back. And we do promise them a lot more episodes to come. Are there any last words, anything, maybe related to how you would like to see public defense, work in the future? Is there an advent of where we could go, to make things better as it relates to representing indigent defendants? What thoughts do you have related to that, or any other thought that you might have?
I think that I would love for our office to continue, being involved in the community and educating the community about the importance of indigent defense, the importance of our office, and ensuring that we grow. We are living in a time of looming austerity.
Yes.
And there's always the concern, what is sometimes the least important thing to people who control purse strings in this state and country, right? And it's the people who are charged with crimes. There are people in prison right now for vape cartridges that are sleeping in a cell with no air conditioning in the middle of summer.
In August.
That is what we do to people who are charged with crimes in the state of Texas. And indigent defense, public defender's office, private attorneys accepting court appointments. I would emphasize particularly public defender's office, whose whole career is about representing the most vulnerable people in our communities. Our offices can't be the victims of austerity.
Right.
Our offices have to grow, because the arrests, justifiable or not, are not stopping.
Right.
And those people need quality representation and need to be represented by people who see them as human beings.
I mean, unless we fundamentally change the outline of this 800-year experience that we've accomplished so far since the Magna Carta on the right to have a trial by jury, the right to have an open court process, the right to have individual citizens from the community be the judge on your particular case. All of these rights that we have to know what it is that we're charged with, to be able to have the tools to adequately defend ourselves if we're ever accused of a crime. All of that is fundamentally at stake, and they're practiced every single day in your office. And without having the ability to do those things, it is a process, I think, that most people would not want to think about when you think about the alternatives.
That's right.
So basically what you're doing is you're helping to keep us free.
That's right.
Excellent. That's an excellent point. I've really enjoyed our conversation, Stephen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I hope to have you back.
Oh, of course. Anytime.
Sincerely, yes. That's a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We've reached the end. Big thanks to Stephen Gilmore for joining us, and to you for listening. Make sure to subscribe and keep the conversation going between episodes. We'll be back. I think that 4-week period of trials really, in fact, we had to cancel a lot of different interviews, but we're looking forward to getting back on it. Thank you so much, listeners, for staying with us. Thank you for being as loyal as you've been. As always, you could go on the website, and you could throw down a question, some comments. We love to hear from them. We love to hear from you. Have a great rest of the week.